Welcome back everyone to a brand new edition of the new most OP builds, as we'll be covering 10 different setups in today's video that are really strong right now but still have yet to fully catch on.
Throughout the rift, a great migration occurs every 30 seconds. The minion wave, a vital food source for any climber who knows how to harvest it. But here, we observe one of nature's most baffling behaviors, the hard-stuck player abandoning his food source to chase a kill he will never get. Without proper wave management, he cannot survive, he cannot grow, he cannot climb. In the wild, this tragedy plays out thousands of times every minute, but today, something is different. Today, he discovered a powerful new tool, SkillCapped Season 16 macro and wave control courses, designed to teach even the most lost climber the secrets of the rift, walking you through every minute of the game step by step, from the very first wave all the way to closing out games cleanly. And unlike other guides in the wild, we focus on teaching you the macro concepts that actually work in solo queue, and most importantly, strategies you can execute without having to rely on the rest of your pack, which paired with our newly updated Essentials courses covers everything you need to master Season 16 for every role, giving you the complete roadmap to climb this season. And best of all, you can do it all completely risk-free, as you're backed up by a rank-up guarantee. If you somehow don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. For the first time in his life, he is no longer hard stuck. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount code.
So Gangplank has had his optimal setup change quite a bit over the past few patches, as we all know how good he is with Deathfire Touch, but he's really underrated with the new boots Gluttonous Greaves as well. Gluttonous Greaves providing that Omnivamp is such a powerful stat for Gangplank due to the sheer amount of damage he can deal. You are hitting so hard once you're on a few items that the healing coming from Gluttonous Greaves is way more valuable on Gangplank than on most champs. What we're seeing so far is that a good chunk of high elo Gangplank players have started running the boots. It's around 20% of players right now, and they're winning way more than SkillCapped or Lucidity boots users. SkillCapped are still going to be very strong in games where the enemy team deals a lot of auto attack damage, but if that's not the case, then definitely look to go Gluttonous Greaves over everything else. So here's a look at the core build as you are rushing Essence Reaver into Gluttonous Greaves 2nd, the Collector 3rd, and Infinity Edge 4th, while Deathfire Touch is the best keystone. So after the Hail of Blades mini rework from a few patches back, we've seen it become a lot stronger on a bunch of champions, and one pick who remains really underrated with it is Zehen. Hail of Blades makes a ton of sense for Zehen because it allows him to stack his passive up a lot faster. The faster you're able to attack, the more passive stacks you get, so it makes the skirmish potential and 1v2 threat of Zehen incredibly strong. This isn't to say Conqueror is bad now, but Hail of Blades is tracking as a legit alternative if run in the correct spots. Where Conqueror makes the most sense is in games where the enemy team is more tanky, and therefore you won't have as much of an issue surviving in fights and eventually stacking your passive up. Where Hail of Blades comes into play is in games where the enemy team is majority squishy and have a lot of burst damage, where just getting your passive ramped as quick as possible is really key. So here's a look at the complete rune page, as it's Hail of Blades with Sudden Impact, Grizzly Mementos, and Ultimate Hunter, followed by Nimbus Cloak and Transcendence for secondaries. So Udyr builds have been evolving a bunch over these recent patches, since you can now build Bruiser on him and find a ton of success. At first, it was a Spear of Shojin into Sundered Sky core that was leading to the best results, but now what's working the best is slotting in Experimental Hexplate instead of Sundered Sky. So you rush Shojin into Hexplate for your 2-item core. So how this setup works is that you still want to go for a Q max, even though Hexplate triggers on R usage. At first, you might be thinking, well, wouldn't Hexplate just suck on Udyr because you could activate the passive at any moment and it would be unreliable? Not at all, because you are only putting 1 point into your R and will only be using R when you intend on entering a fight. So when you're about to enter a skirmish, you use R for the Hexblade activation and then swap back to Q, as you'll want to be hitting with empowered Qs most of the time when you're skirmishing. The movement speed that you get for activating the Hexplate passive pairs incredibly well with Udyr's E and allows for him to reach his target way more consistently in skirmishes. And then once you're on top of your opponent, the DPS potential is incredible with this Q-Max style of Udyr. For runes, you can take either Conqueror or Press the Attack. Both are viable. It just depends on if you want more burst from PTA or better extended fight power from Conqueror. So we talked about Gangplank finding a bunch of success with Gluttonous Greaves to start the video, but one jungler who's super underrated with them right now is Graves. So the idea behind Gluttonous Greaves on Graves is similar to Gangplank in the sense that both champs can deal an absurd amount of DPS once they reach a few items, so the percent Omnivamp is incredibly valuable for them. Being able to heal for 10% 90% of the damage you deal is insane if your auto attacks are hitting for over 500 in the later stages of the game. Greaves players who are taking Gluttonous Greaves have been winning over 5% more than those going SteelCapped or Merc Treads, which is a crazy gap. Of course, this will be inflated a bit by the fact that it's likely more experienced Graves players running the boots, and they are more of a snowbally option, but even then, you don't usually see a gap as large as 5%, even in such cases. So Hubris with Gluttonous Greaves, the Collector, and Lord Doms is the standard core that you'll want to try on your Graves for 26.12. So we mentioned how Riven mid lane is an off-meta pick who has been finding a bunch of success lately in our recent meta videos, but there's another traditional top laner who's been winning way more as a mid laner as of recent, and it's Gwen. So Gwen mid with a burst build is popping off lately, and she even got buffed for this patch, so she's in a better spot now. The 2-item core that you'll be running is Lichbane into Malignance. So the idea behind this build is that your all-in strength against squishies is absolutely incredible. You're just looking to burst an enemy down in as short a time as possible, and these 2 items are perfect to enable that. For even more upfront burst potential, you're going First Strike for the Keystone Rune, and then you can also abuse Jack of all trades really well. What many Gwen mid players have been doing is they're taking Doran's Helm for their starting item, and then grabbing something like Dark Seal and Boots on their first base so that they can very quickly gain the 5 stacks of Jack of all trades. There's a new Keystone Rune that has been performing very well on Diana over the past patch, and it's Storm Raiders Surge. So Storm Raiders is now winning at about the same rate as Electrocute after its recent buffs, and is a legit alternative. The reason Storm Raiders works so well on Diana is because it allows her to reposition extremely well after diving into a fight. Diana has always struggled with staying alive and getting out of a fight after she's entered, but with Storm Raiders Surge, that weakness is greatly alleviated. Storm Raiders is very easy for Diana to proc because she can deal 25% of an enemy's health bar every single time she dives in. So after you dive in on your target, being able to escape once you've scored a kill gives her a much more reliable extended skirmish. Taking Storm Raiders over Electrocute is going to make the most sense in games where you're lacking early game kill threat. If you don't think that you can solo kill early on, then just grab Storm Raiders Surge so that you'll scale way better into team fights. So one of the most underrated champions in the game with Deathfire Touch is Ahri. Deathfire is winning way more than Electrocute on Ahri, but very few players are taking it. Ahri's entire build, for that matter, isn't really being optimized by most players. Most players are stuck on the Malignance into Shadow Flame core, but Blackfire Torch into Cosmic Drive or Lichbane is working so much better. Ahri really isn't a burst champion unless she's super far ahead. Then she's not going to 100 to 0 a squishy with a full combo, so building items like Blackfire and Cosmic Drive that will allow you more rotations of spells during skirmishes is really powerful. You only get 15 ability haste by going Malignance into Shadow Flame, but you get 45 by going Blackfire into Cosmic Drive, so your basic abilities are going to be up way more often. Ahri Charm is on a 12-second base cooldown, so if you don't have very much haste in your build, you're really limited as to how many you can get off in skirmishes, and if you miss one, it's a long time until you can use it again. So look to try out this more skirmishing style of Ahri if you have yet to already, as it's winning the most out of any setup in solo queue, but is still very underrated. So an ADC who has really shot up in power as of recent, and one of the best Gluttonous Greaves users is Zeri. It's not really even close as to how much more Gluttonous Greaves Zeri players are winning compared to Berserker's Greaves users, as it's currently a 4% win rate gap. At first, we were skeptical because the play rate of Gluttonous Greaves were lower, and they are in theory a more snowbally purchase, so the win rate gap being that large wasn't something we put too much stock into. As things have progressed though, and now with around 40% of Zeri players taking the boots, the fact the win rate gap remains at 4% just gives us pretty good indication that Gluttonous Greaves are flat out better than Berserker's Greaves on Zeri. So here's why we think Gluttonous Greaves are just better than Berserker's Greaves on Zeri now. Zeri likes to run Doran's Bow as her starting item, and by going Doran's Bow, you are receiving 15% attack speed. You rush Stormrazor, and that's got 20% attack speed, and then you go into Fiend Hunter Bolts, which provides a mass amount of attack speed when you pop your R. So if you build Berserker's Greaves on top of that, you are just going overboard on attack speed. Zeri's items provide plenty, so opting for some additional sustain from Gluttonous Greaves will provide more relative value. Other than Bloodline and Runes, Zeri has no way of accessing lifesteal from items, so access to sustain through Gluttonous Greaves is incredibly powerful. So after the Imperial Mandate rework last patch, it hasn't really been excelling on too many champions, but one pick who has been liking it more than most is Seraphine. Seraphine with Imperial Mandate and Rylai's as a core build is the best carry setup that you can play on her for 26.12. When you use Seraphine E or R, you will be able to proc the Mandate passive. If you guys are unaware, Riot changed Mandate so that you now need to hit immobilizing spells to proc its passive, as slows no longer work. So if you go Mandate into Rylai's on Seraphine, then her E is always going to provide an immobilizing effect. Now, we don't think this setup is just flat out the best for every single game though. The Echoes of Helia Whispering Circlet core is still great if the enemy team is more longer ranged and pokey. If you're playing into more melee champs though, that's where this Mandate setup comes into play. Melee champs need to come into you, so it's more likely you are going to be able to land your E and gain the bonus effects from the Mandate passive more consistently. If you're playing into a heavier ranged comp, then hitting E in fights regularly isn't going to be as reliable, powerful, and therefore just going for the Echoes of Helia build will be the way to go. And then to round out the video, we have a PSA to all Nami players, as you need to stop running Imperial Mandate as a rush item. The item is incredibly weak on Nami now because she is not able to proc the bonus effects from its passive by using her E. So instead, the build that is working way better now revolves around rushing Echoes of Helia. Echoes of Helia has been one of the more underrated items on Nami this season, as when Mandate was good, we liked Helia slotted in as a second purchase. Now that Mandate is off the table, replace it with Echoes of Helia, and Nami really isn't in that bad of a spot. Overall win rate of Nami is being dragged down right now by players continuing to take Mandate, with Imperial Mandate Nami players winning 49% of the time, as opposed to Echoes of Helia users who are at 51%. The core that you will want to try if you have a traditional ADC is Echoes of Helia into Ardent Sensor. Missing Mandate is unfortunate since you aren't able to buff up your carry as much, but Ardent Sensor is a great replacement, as you will be providing them with the bonus attack speed and magic damage whenever you use your W on them. But while lists like these show you what to play, our brand new Season 16 Essentials courses for every role teach you how to win, each designed to walk you through every stage of the game from start to finish, from the exact trading and recall timers you need to win lane, to the mid-game macro decisions 99% of players get completely wrong, all the way to the team fighting tips and tricks challengers abuse to always deal the highest damage possible. Whether you're a top laner in the most unfavorable matchup possible, a mid laner having to deal with everybody in your lane 24/7, a jungler trying to balance ganking with farming, an ADC stuck trying to hard carry with a support who just exists to grief you, or a support that's struggling to carry games on your own. Our Essentials courses are tailor-made to focus on the exact concepts that actually matter for climbing on your role in your elo. Check them out today, completely risk-free, using the link in the pinned comment or description below, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions, you get every penny back. So there you have it, everyone. Those are 10 new builds that are incredibly powerful for 26.12. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.